And welcome back to, I heard you when you said, the only podcast that brings you new water bottles and new glasses in the same week. And we're excited to be back. It's been a hot minute. We had holidays, we had New Year's, we had snow.
We had Snowmageddon.
Easy. We did not have Snowmageddon, okay? You weren't here in 2021 for that in Texas, okay? Nobody lost power. I'm not saying nobody, but people didn't lose power all over the place. We just got a lot of snow for our area. And Stacy just so happened to be here in the highest accumulation of snow in North Texas in a decade easily, which only confirms her bias that the weather changes wherever she goes. So, that's what I've been dealing with for the past week.
My bias,
but I'm glad.
Changes.
Yes, everything. And so, here we are. I just wanted to make sure everybody had the proper context come into this podcast.
Yeah, we've done so much since we recorded last.
Which I think was the last one we did was with Dr. Haley, right? That one was end of November or beginning of December, something like that. I think it was the beginning of December. I think it's the only one we put out in December, but no matter. We're good to go here. We've got a lot of things that we've been accumulating in the holding tank, if you will, conversational holding tank, as every week when we have our weekly calls with the people who our community, our cooperative inside of school, that different subjects, common sentiments, and things that people are things that are challenges that everybody deals with start to pop up. And so every time it's like, ooh, we should talk about that. We should talk about that. We should talk about that. And so there's so many things that get tossed out there that we have to basically squeeze it down into, okay, what's going to actually make a difference in terms of you being able to listen and think about and give your own context and go and do something with. So that's how we ended up here today.
Yeah, they give us a plethora of information to use. Like, these conversations have been so good that the list of things that we're asked to talk about and bring to the podcast is almost endless, which I'm so thankful for, that we always have something to talk about. I mean, you and I could talk about just about anything any day of the week, but it's just like what other people want us to talk about.
Well, it's not currently going on because this is the only time it stopped since we started working this morning. But what we could talk about is the fact that we have started a small dove fight club outside of our office window, basically directly behind the camera angle that we have right now. And it consists of about a consistent 4 doves, sometimes more, who fight for this 6 by 1 inch rectangle, maybe 8 by 1 inch rectangle of tray of food that they, with a little peak over the top of it, that they try to perch on that, and they slide off, and they come up and they bump one of them off, and one of them goes down the roof, and one of them comes back up, and it's just a constant. Sometimes they sit in the middle of the seed, so like no other doves can get up there while they're eating, and it's as distracting as it is entertaining. And yeah, so that's what's actually been going on.
That is actually entertaining. We've got a couple dumb doves. They're literally, I don't want to judge their intellect, but a couple of them just they're on the lower end of the IQ.
Or quail if you're Stacy.
Not an aviary expert. Was that the right way to say it? Aviary expert?
I think so, yeah.
We do, though, have some cute little new guys. What are the little ones? The sparrow?
I mean, they look like a sparrow. They have that kind of brown and black speckle to them. They're, as big as your Dr. Pepper can. They're just tiny little things. And one of them has some type of like red chest / kind of partly red head. And I've never seen that variety before. I don't know. So,
well, and the only other cool bird we've got little sparrows and the doves, and we haven't seen that cool big black bird that is not a crow that just hasn't shown up when you're in the office, because I do know what a crow looks like. Okay, seriously, I know what a crow looks like. But I've only had the cardinal up here one time, and that was when I was on the phone with your mom. But I really want the red cardinal to come back, because he is just beautiful.
Well, you'd have to be on the phone with my mom again.
Okay, well, that's gonna be a couple more weeks. So,
yeah. So that's the new happenings we got going on around here. So, as always, I'll extend the invitation, early on this time, is that if you want to be a part of these conversations, especially the ones that make it to the podcast, then we want to invite you to join our Fortify Health Coaching Cooperative, which is our community on a platform called School. And if you're new here, or maybe you've heard it a million times before, we started the community to be able to give people a place to come and get solutions to their problems, but also to give people a space to talk about the things that are going on in terms of their personal situation, and how the whole group can learn a lesson from it. Now, it doesn't mean you have to come and share all your deep, dark shit and then allow everybody else to like pat you on the back because you're such a, warrior for dealing with, XYZ bullshit. It's more about coming and going like, I've never thought about it like that. Or, okay, I'm really still struggling to see it like this. I'm still struggling to see this side of the equation. And of course we talk about, health and fitness and functional health and all that kind of stuff. But we've learned that the behavior change part of it really doesn't come until you start to understand what's going on, from the brain to the body. And that's a lot about what gets talked about, from a community standpoint.
Well, we do. I mean, if you're willing, if you're not opposed, have another announcement that we haven't talked about on the podcast. I mean, It's been talked about, in school and kind of leaked on social media a little bit, but you've never fully announced it on the podcast of what's new in your life.
Oh, that's right. That is. I mean, it's been on social media. You would have just had to be following us to understand it. We, as in me and my wife Paige and my son Kason, are getting ready to have another baby.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a girl. Allegedly, I mean, according to all the scans, tests, and things that you do when you're pregnant. And we are 22 weeks, something
like that
ish, halfway ish, down the timeline. So, come end of May, beginning of June area, we will be welcoming baby Blakely into the world, and she's going to be the only thing that I pay attention to for probably a month thereafter. So
I was going to be the next 18 years for sure, but you went a month. So
I mean, she's got to share the spotlight a little bit after that. Okay.
You're so endearing right now. This is going to be so fun to watch. I'll give you, a whole month. Mm-hmm. Not 18 years. It'll be amazing. I can't wait. This might be more fun for me than it is for you.
What do you mean might be?
That it might be more fun for
me? No, it's 100% going to be more fun for you.
Well, I'll get to sleep. So unless I get the call, hey, can you take the baby for a little bit so we can sleep? And I'll be like, abso-freaking-lutely. And she was an angel. How'd that happen? It just happens when your kids come to my house.
Well, I put her in the, I put her in the hidey hole in the closet, let her sleep, and she had a great time. Now, the real doozy is going to be when we ask you to watch Kason and her.
Oh my God, I'll be so excited.
You're going to be like, oh my gosh, we're welcome to Stacy's Playhouse.
Can I tell you the delusion that I already have?
Please.
Do you want to know this? is that when I get to take them both to the park and I get the little front pack, like carry in the front pack and then swing him on the swing. And like people are like, oh, look at that. Because they won't know. Like when I just have both of them by myself, they'll just assume my mom, not the, cool friend who lives down the street, kind of auntie-like life. They're like, she's so rested. Like the people who don't ask you questions, like, how does she do that? They're not mine.
They're going to be like, how did you have a baby at 50 years old?
Oh my gosh, I didn't tell you the story. I did tell Paige the story. And we'll get into what we're talking about. I was at CVS down the street picking up a prescription for Isaiah. And there's a line down the middle of the store, like in between the merchandise. There's not a good place to stand. So you just stand in the middle. And I said, is this a line? And older gentleman, probably in his 70s, like maybe late 70s, is in front of me. And I said, hey, I don't want to cut in front of you. I said, this is a small town and I don't want to make people mad. It might get on the neighborhood Facebook group, and far be it from me to make somebody mad in a small town. And he looks at me, like takes his glasses and pulls them down and said, small town, huh? Where are you from? And I'm like, I'm from California. And he's like, I said, no, not the way you think. Not the way you think. And so we get into the conversation of, how many kids I have, and my oldest being 24 and me being 48. And he's like, you are not 48. You are not. And I'm like, I am. He's like, I don't think so. My youngest is 54 and you are not 48. I'm like, and I wasn't even looking cute that day. Like I was in like workout clothes, and he was not having that I was 48, and he gave me like that old timer hard time of just kind of harassing me in CVS because I started the conversation. And so he's trying to understand Isaiah because Isaiah has his headphones on and trying to make sense of like medication for him. I'm like, yeah, medications for him. And so he must be in there a lot because the lady at the checkout like knew his name and like the whole story. And so I'm checking out for Isaiah, and he literally comes over and touches me. He's like, it was good talking to you. I'm like, I'll see you later. He's like, you sure about that? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be seeing you. I'm gonna find you. I'm gonna find you, sir. I'll be seeing you later. So yeah, I mean, it could be because I'm not 50 yet. Thank you. Not even 49. I mean, we've got a couple months.
Sure.
I know we're pushing really for Blakely to be born on your birthday. Like that's the goal. That is literally, if you're listening to this, that's like the energy we're putting on out into this, that Justin and Blakely get share birthday. But there is a second option. If she was just a tiny bit early, her lungs would be fully developed. It'd be okay, just like a little bit past 36 weeks, that she could also be born on my birthday.
Which is when? May what?
May 8th.
May 8th. That's a tiny bit early for sure.
It's a tiny bit. It's 30, like 36 and a half weeks. She'll be fine.
Look,
we're not in control of this.
I know we're not in control of this, but we're not rushing anything either. Okay? You're not going to rush these thoroughbred genetics developing.
I will rush no such thing. I will rush no such thing.
I'm actually more surprised that he figured out that the medication was for Isaiah, given the fact that now people wear a lot more headphones out in public, like especially over the ear headphones. I was just thinking about that as you said that. I was like, I mean, obviously his are a little bit more like muffle type headphones, not like Beats or something that you would see somebody wearing over the ears, but it is so popular now to see just teenagers wearing headphones now. Now, of course, obviously, if you are paying any more than just initial attention, you're going to be able to tell, okay, like this is a special needs child, whatever. And so it just struck me as funny that he was like, oh, for him, medication. You should have said, no, this is my anti-aging medication that I'm coming to pick up.
Anyway, that was a conversation with a local in regards to my age, and I'm gonna say, one of us is getting older and the other one of us is getting younger. Eventually, this line levels out.
Mm-hmm.
This line eventually levels out.
Yep, sure does.
We'll have this conversation.
And when that happens, This podcast will cease to exist.
We will revisit this conversation in 10
Yes.
years.
We will.
We'll take a poll, make people guess our age in 10 years.
We'll revise and revisit as necessary.
And when you look older, they can be like, she stressed him out that much. Look at how much she aged since being in business with her.
This guy
was
really
just
got
young,
the spit in the stick.
in 30 and now at 40.
He really took a beating.
What changed? Oh, not that he had another kid. Spend all day with her? Oh, yeah. Understood.
Had to travel all over the place and do all kinds of crazy stuff. And, here we are 10 years later.
Got to live the best life. Speaking of travel, leads us right in to the thing we're talking about today.
Very true.
Do you want to talk about how we got here?
Actually, I want you to talk about how we got here because you're going to have a better, you were the one who had the, well, you were the one who had the, I guess, serendipitous. Was it a reel or some type of thing?
TikTok was stalking me.
Yeah.
Okay. And since my husband doesn't listen to the podcast because I'm not supposed to have TikTok on my phone because
it's okay. After the 19th, nobody will.
We have a VPN. I'm keeping it. I have very few vices.
We probably got flagged just for saying the word, so it's fine, whatever.
I learned so much, though. I learned so much. See, I'm going to bring it up because I can, because it's in context of Blakely, and I shared it with Paige last night on our walk. They have. Can I say slutty? I can say slutty on our podcast.
I think that's appropriate. Yep.
There's this thing called slutty pumping. And hold on. Not what you think.
Can't wait to see how you tie this one in.
Okay. Things I learned on TikTok. This is going to go into how did this show up on my feed? Okay. How is slutty pumping showing up on a 48-year-old woman's feed who had her tubes tied 20 years ago and is currently not pregnant? Okay. So slutty pumping is that your body will actually produce more breast milk after sexual activity. And so it kind of went viral that these moms were like, there's no way. I'm wondering if a husband was just like, let's just try. Let's just see if this is true. And of course, a mom's going to make more breast milk. She's going to be like, oh, hell yeah, where she wasn't motivated before for any sexual activity. You're going to double my production? I will so double down, which makes every husband feel so wanted, but they probably don't care because they're getting some, it doesn't matter. And so I was telling Paige about it last night. I'm like, have you heard about this thing like slutty pumping? She's like, why would they call it that? And I'm like, well, here's how it went viral. And women literally showed how much breast milk they usually expressed at that same time of day. But then when they had sexual activity and then went and pumped, they got double the amount. Is that crazy?
I mean, it's not super crazy. I can see stimulation leading to further stimulate, right?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Like a waterfall effect kind of thing. But the question now remains, do you have to have a partner?
Oh, I don't know if that I don't know. And I'm not going to be breastfeeding anytime soon.
Anyway.
So
if you're on slutty pump talk anytime soon, send Stacey a DM, be like, wow, crazy stuff.
Which then leads to our conversation of today. Why people climbing Mount Everest and slutty pumping are the things that are on my TikTok feed. This is what our government should be afraid of, because these are the things that I'm learning right now. Is that I got inundated with people climbing Mount Everest. And so I got really fascinated. It is not something I want to do at all. Not one inkling of my humanity says, let's please do this. I don't like to be cold, but even saying that, I think after training this week, you'd be like, really? You don't like to be cold? It's 30 degrees and you're training in a sports bra. I don't believe you. That was this explanation of how much work and dedication it takes to climb Everest. And it was something that I didn't understand. One, that people have to try at least 4 to 6 times before they summit. And we'll get into the strategy and break it down of the things that we want to bring to the forefront for people in regards to our perspective of this. of really what's your personal Everest and what it takes to get there.
Mm-hmm. So the way that you explained it to me whenever you were going down this Everest rabbit hole, which I'm glad you decided to go down the Everest rabbit hole and not the slutty pumping rabbit hole, but as deep anyway, that people attempt this 4+ times before they ever actually summit, if they summit.
If they summit.
And one of the things that they all have in common is that they takes them somewhere like a month just to reach base camp, or is it longer than that?
Well, it takes 12 days to reach base camp. So if we're going to back this up, so it takes training for how, I don't even know how long before you even embark on this. And I can't even tell you, I didn't do the math of how much it actually financially costs people to do this. I mean, we're talking about travel to Nepal, 2 months time in country, right? So could you imagine how you'd have to condition and train prior to leaving? So you get to where you start to get to prepare to go to base camp, and that's typically about 12 days. And each day you are hiking between 5 to 9 hours each day just to get to base camp.
For 12 days.
For 12 days. And some people, depending on how well they acclimate to elevation, will take extra days just to allow themselves to recover before they hike the next day. So 12 days just to get to base camp at minimum. Then when they're at base camp, they're at base camp for 4 to 6 weeks before they even start to climb the mountain. So 8 weeks at about on average,
right,
just to begin to climb a mountain. And you're going to have to math me, okay? That you have what probability of making up that mountain the first time? If it takes 6 times, 4 to 6 times,
less than 20%.
to less than a 20% chance. So what do you think it costs? 20 grand?
To do, like in the totality of it all?
Yeah. You think it costs 20 grand?
I'm gonna say easy.
At least.
I mean, but just think about how much it costs to live anywhere for a month.
Right. Because they have lives that they're paying for.
Right. So you're talking about, you're easily talking about $4,000 just to live, right? That's not including travel expenses. That's not including, like you going and doing anything while you're there. That's not including whatever it costs you to be with a person who's training you to do the thing in country, a guide, whatever the thing is. So yeah, 20 grand, I would say on the low end for sure. Anyway, so we're 8 weeks
for a 20% chance,
right?
And 20 grand in. I'm going to say you're probably better bet odds in Vegas of winning something. Well, depending on what you win something.
With that much money.
You get something in Vegas.
Oh, everybody brings back something from Vegas, for sure.
Doesn't they lie? When I was in Vegas, does not stay in Vegas. And so really where we wanted to take it to today in our conversation is how does this apply in adaptation and people with their goals and the things that we see on a day-to-day basis in not only our community, our online community, but our clients and even personally.
Well, let's finish that out for just a second. So,
sure.
So it takes them 8 weeks just to get to the point to where they can actually start to make the climb. And then once they start making the climb, they're looking at how much longer, relatively speaking, until they have the opportunity to summit.
That I don't know because some people die.
Of course.
Some people die and they leave the dead bodies up there. So you're just walking by dead people. I see dead people and they're right there. And a lot of the time is spent. I'd have to look. I think it's more days, but I can't. That wasn't a part of the deep dive that I took. I was more on the preparation. That was more fascinating to me of what people will invest at a shot at reaching a peak when it's not guaranteed and how much time and investment they would take to fail at something repeatedly because to say that they did this. And so what I've heard is that what takes longer and why it's so dangerous is how many people are summiting. Like there's traffic on the peaks of this mountain because a lot of it's single file and like one wrong move and like, dude, you're toast. So that piece I don't know actually of how long it takes to go from base camp to the summit. I'm sure we can look it up.
Sure. So, I mean, the besides that, detail, let's just make it up and say it takes you another month to make it up to the top, right? Sure. So you're looking at easily 3 months of time just to make it to the top. And then that doesn't include coming back down, reacclimating, coming back down.
And nobody talks about that. I haven't seen any information on what it takes to repair from reaching summit.
Yeah.
You hear about who dies,
right?
But what does recovery look like emotionally, physically, after you've accomplished something that remarkable?
Right. And I think, and something that physically and mentally taxing. So I think that, you can't even really calculate the amount of time post descent, like post making it back to home, whatever that is, right? Not even just base camp or Nepal, but like to wherever you actually live. That, I mean, you're really looking at like a year's process.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, quite honestly, by the time you factor in preparation, doing the thing, recovering from the thing, recovering from the thing, right? Like whatever it is. And so what I think that conversation led to in terms of when we had a conversation about it, or when you had a conversation about it on Coffee with Stacy, one of the calls that we do within our group, is that everybody has their own personal Everest, right? Everybody has this thing that they're trying to summit, they're trying to overcome, they're trying to control, they're trying to achieve, whatever that thing is. And what often gets missed is that what they're looking for is some type of specific adaptation. So in our context, generally, it's a physical adaptation, right? People want to lose weight. People want to run faster. People want to be able to, not eat one sandwich and gain 10 pounds from eating bread, right? Or whatever the thing is, whatever people think happens. Or more often, they don't want to spiral out of control from one conflict conversation, right? Which conflict is part of life. So nobody's going to avoid conflict altogether, right? They don't want to spiral out of control. You're actually looking for a mental adaptation in that perspective. But what they're looking for is an adaptation of some type. And this is where you look at people and go, man, why does it look so easy for them? Well, it's because they have set up their environment internally and externally to produce an adaptation that's favorable for them, and you envy it, right? You envy that, you want that adaptation. And for some people are just born with certain qualities, certain characteristics to be able to handle certain stressors better. Doesn't mean that they're good at everything. It just means that whatever you're looking at, especially now with social media, it's going to direct your eyes to this person who really is good at making this adaptation and or, has been somewhat gifted with the ability to do this thing or to look this way or to act this way or whatever. And so what you have to understand is adaptation takes time, a lot of time, depending on how big of an adaptation you're looking for. So Everest is the tallest peak in the world or whatever it is, right? Well, that's going to take relative to the thing you're trying to reach, it's going to take a long time to adapt to be able to get a shot at that, like you said, and be willing to risk your life to even take that shot. That's really the like you said, people are willing to fail. And in my mind, it was like, well, they're actually willing to die.
They're willing to die.
Failure doesn't, like, they're like, okay, if I got to do it 6 times, like, that's just the average. Like, you're going to do it 6 times.
And that's something like so fascinating to me, especially having a husband in the military, like, and being so focused on, hey, literally willing to die for my country. Okay, well that's a principle. That's freedom. Like I understand that, or willing to jump in front of a car to protect my family, or any of that. But for me, I'm like, I'm going to risk my life to climb a mountain. That's not a bias I have. Like, first of all, that's a lot of work, and it's cold.
Yeah.
But yes, they're willing to.
So knowing that adaptations take time, that's where usually the biggest rub is for people, is going like, I want it tomorrow, right? I want it next month. It looks, and then there's obviously all this cultural influence of, abs in 60 days or whatever it is, abs in 8 minutes. Like it's all like whatever, right?
8-minute abs.
Yeah, 8-minute abs. Like,
waited a long time for 8-minute abs.
Those 8-minute abs turned into 8-decade abs. The thing that people miss is that the faster you try to pursue that adaptation for a person with a typical life, right? They've got a family, they have to focus on maintaining consistent income. They focus on, whatever their extracurriculars are in terms of what's outside their family, their job, things of that nature. Like, they're trying to become a better person in general, right? They're trying to improve themselves. Is that all of that stuff also takes time, energy, money, like your resources. And so the adaptation that you're looking for outside of that is going to take longer, because you have to share those times, right? If we could all shut off our life for 3 months and not have to worry about money, other people, like where our food's coming from, whatever, right? If we could just do that and be like, okay, now I want to lose 30 pounds. Well, a lot of people could do it in quicker than 3 months, right? Likely. I'm just saying, like, you can make a lot of progress if you were able to put blinders on and kind of block everything out. And that's what people think is going to happen when they decide one day on January 1st, they're going to wake up and I'm going to lose 50 pounds this year. It's like, well, what you don't know is that you're going to lose some weight initially, then you're going to gain some back, and then you're going to lose some, and then you're not going to lose some for a long time. And then if then you don't give up, you have a better chance of losing a little bit more for like the next 3 months, but it's not going to be as fast as you lost it in the first month. So you're going to get disappointed, right? And so it's this, heartbeat looking type of journey that has a trajectory to it, right? It's either making an adaptation in a positive direction in a helpful way, or it's making an adaptation in a negative way, right? And then, oh, by the way, also there's other adaptations that are going on at the same time. And so my point here is that you can't rush a big change. You just can't rush a big change. Being willing to endure boring, basic, foundational principles of change is the magic. That's the whole thing, right? Like, there's ways to speed it up. There's ways to make it maybe a little bit easier. There's ways to frame it so that you understand it better. But at the end of the day, principles are still going to be the thing that drives you forward, right? And to make these principles part of your life, it requires you to get into a routine with them. And for me, or from the short little equation that I could think of as far as what does routine actually consist of, routine is when you combine structure with practice. So we say, hey, Stacy, here is a structure of how to prepare your food, right? Here's a structure for meal prep. Here are the things that you need to buy, the way you need to cook it, the way you need to season it, whatever, right? Maybe store it. Now, take this structure and go and practice, right? You're going to have to mess up some chicken. You're going to have to, cut the broccoli the wrong way, right? You're going to have to, figure out that you actually don't like chicken breast, you like chicken thighs, right? Like, whatever it is, it's that you're going to have to make mistakes. That's what practice is putting in the reps to figure out what works and what doesn't. And then along with that structure and that practice, or along the way, when you combine that structure and that practice, you create your own routine. And that's where adaptation comes from. It's from that consistent routine.
I think the most challenging thing for people is they expect when they start to practice that it should be perfect. Like, that's not the goal. The goal is just to do it consistently.
Right.
Like, you've got the freedom to mess it up. You don't know what you don't know yet. And I was thinking about this as I was rowing this morning. Just for all you guys watching, I don't know how to row well. I was never taught how to row. And so, like all things that should be shocking about Stacey Hansen, I wasn't taught, so I just figured it out. Well, when I have to figure it out, it's not very efficient. So it costs me a lot of energy to show up with power. And I usually don't even know that I'm doing it until Justin's looking at me. He's like, why are you doing it that way? I'm like, I didn't know that there was another way to do it. Can I show you? Yes. And so as I'm on the rower this morning, I was like, okay, heels down, keep the chain in the box. How far are you going? And it took it, and he wasn't available to come help me this morning and remind me how to do it. But I was even thinking, like, this is going to be imperfect. You're not going to do this as well as you want to because he's not here to coach you on this right now. But do it to the best of your ability because it's better than the last time you did it because you're thinking about it. Mm-hmm. Where the last time I did it, I wasn't thinking about it at all. I looked like a disconjointed child, like learning how to walk. And I'm like, okay, well, it's been some time since then. And it didn't have to be perfect. I just knew that I was doing it better than the last time I did it. Mm-hmm. Consistently. And releasing that outcome that my practice has to be perfect. My mile has to be this time, or my lift, or whatever. I didn't yell at my kid one time and then I lost my crap the next one. Like, skills take practice to adapt to them.
And I'm glad you brought that up as far as like what was going through your head when you were doing, excuse me, when you were having that thought, that conversation with yourself, was that when you take structure and practice and you say, okay, structure plus practice equals routine, you need to put a little, like what is that, like a bracket that encompasses structure and practice, and it comes down into a mutual point at the bottom that says how you think about structure and practice.
Ooh,
right?
Okay.
Your perspective, essentially.
Yeah.
Because your perspective on, have I seen this structure work for other people, or have I tried it before? Or did I really give it a good shot? Like whatever my effort level was before in the practice, right? And then how you think about your performance during that practice, right? How you judge that performance, which most of the time is not up for you to judge, right? If you have a coach, right? If you're getting coached on that particular skill, it's like, okay, I need to seek feedback on this thing. That the perspective that you have to both of those things is actually the number one ingredient to both of those things. Because I could take any structure and any practice and put it in that equation, but if your perspective is not correct, it's not going to equal a routine, right? It's going to be very inconsistent. But I could also take any structure and any practice, and if your mindset is one of adaptability, one of I'm going to figure this out little by little, and I'm okay with baby steps, then it doesn't matter what the structure and the practice looks like. You're going to figure out how to improve it over time, right? My biggest example of this right now is I'm re-stepping into the adventure of learning how to play the guitar. I did this last year, okay?
Same time, same bat time, same bat channel.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
Okay, but talk about how you're doing it different.
The same bat channel.
Correct.
Is that I learned last year. This is part of what I'm getting at. This is not to brag on myself. This is to show you.
You can brag on yourself.
I had to make a change.
You can brag on yourself.
I consider myself a pretty good self-starter for most things, right? As far as like willing to go in it and learn the information, and kind of teach myself to some degree, invest small amounts of money in like an app or a book or a program or whatever it is to facilitate an outcome, right? Well, I downloaded a guitar app last year. It cost me like $75 for the year. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to see how far I can get in learning this self-paced whatever through this app. And it lasted, what would you say, 4 months, maybe?
I was going to say 3 or 4 months.
3 or 4 months.
Like, it was really heavy, consistent at the beginning. And then life changed for us.
Yeah.
When you decided to do this, we hadn't started our own company yet.
Right.
So as we literally launched this from the ground up, it fell away because other things took priority.
Right. So here's that perfect example, right? Here's me trying to get a routine with a guitar, and oh, by the way that I make money just literally flipped on its head and changed, and now it's up to me to go and, and you at the time, right? Like, well, you still now too.
I'm still here.
You're still here. Sorry.
By the way, I'm still here. I'm real human.
It's up to us to go and figure this out, how to do this from 2 separate locations, which then you moved and it totally went out the window then. Like it wasn't even a thought at that point. I didn't even feel bad about not doing it at that point.
She's here. It's fine.
And so situations change. And I literally reduced it down to what would the smallest version of this look like? And it got down into just touch your guitar. Like if you want to keep this up right now in your season of life, your habit's going to have to be you literally take it out of the case and touch it. Like that is the habit you're trying to do. You touch it. You don't even have to strum it. You don't even have to play a chord. You don't even have to pull up your phone and get out the app or whatever it was. You just have to touch it. And that did okay for a couple weeks, right? And that got me a little bit farther down the road in terms of like having this delusion that I would actually pick it back up and have the time required to actually continue some type of structured learning. But when I rethought about it, end of last year, beginning of this year, I said, you know what? This is something I'm going to need somebody in person for. I'm going to need that small amount of pressure in the back of my mind to go, hey, you're going to see your teacher, okay? And they're going to expect you to have learned or at least practiced these things that they taught you last time, right? A little bit of accountability, a little bit of in-person, that nuance of question and answer that you get in person, things of that nature. So that was the approach I took to guitar this time. And so far, I've only been to 2 lessons. So, the free one that they give you, and then, however you want to set up your structure. I go every other week, currently for 30 minutes every other week. And that's how I'm going to start, right? Because I know better. My bias is to go, I should probably do this at least once a week, every single week, and see how many times it takes to, see how many months it takes to get as good as you can and as fast as you can. But I actually know better than that now. I've learned myself better. So that's another key point here. As you go through these, switching up the structure and switching up the way you practice, you need to take a lesson away from every time. I learned, hey, this is not a skill that an app's going to be able to teach you. This is not a skill that you're going to be able to learn from an app. You may be able to improve once you have your base understanding from an app, right? I may be able to, in a year, 2 years, or whatever, when I have like my ABCs of guitar down, right? I may be able to improve based on some things that an app can give you, but it's not going to be right now, right? And so being willing to go, you know what, that wasn't the way that worked for you. Let's not even step back into that realm. Let's try this over here. And it just so happens it's super convenient. It's like literally I don't have to drive anywhere. It's like right at the top of our neighborhood, this place. And I go in there, I get the lesson, I come back home and, set myself a little objective of practicing 10 minutes every day, right? Or something like that. Just play the chords, right? And again, I could go back to just touch it because I know that I'm going to get at the very minimum 30 minutes of practice every other week, right? That's going to be my bare minimum, but that's not going to take me, it's not going to get me better necessarily. So I'm using all that as an example to say that sometimes lots of times there are going to be things that you're going to approach the first time and you're going to go, either don't want to do that again, or I thought I had something there, but it really just wasn't what I thought it was, right? I couldn't bring myself to continue to stay consistent there. It's in that moment, and you brought it up just a while ago, is just being aware of going, you know what? Life shifted. For whatever reason, I could not stay consistent with it this way, right? Or at this time. That the way, like it wasn't the app's fault. I could have retried the app this year because, like, hey, your business is a little bit more consistent now. So, like, here you go. Let's try to retry this app again. But I knew better than that because I've learned through enough iterations of this to go, hey, let's just go get somebody, right? Unless it's some astronomical amount of cost, right? If you can invest in it, go invest in it, right? To the level that you can. And so the point that I'm trying to make here is that you look at your structure. Okay, I like to break things down into simple parts, right? Look at the structure of which you're trying to adapt to something, like make an adaptation. Look at the practice that you're doing. So for your example, the row, and look at your mindset surrounding those two things. And if you find yourself being really down on yourself because you suck at it, congratulations. You suck at it. Congratulations. You get the chance to suck at something. Because there's a lot of people who are sitting on the couch not sucking at anything because they're too scared to, right? So you have to be willing to go and be terrible at something before you even sniff being good at it, right? Or even being decent at it, whatever that means to you, right? So I can tell you, the person who absolutely sucks at running is way better than the people who don't run.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking about that I wrote about it on Instagram today, so I'll bring it up, is that 2 years ago yesterday, Justin and I with somebody else recorded our first podcast. It was a different podcast. You can't find it and go look for it. And I remember being so nervous. Like, I wanted to throw up as we were recording that first podcast. And I'm typically not that nervous about much. And I didn't like it. And thankfully, we scrapped it for other reasons. It got scrapped. And we got to re-record that first podcast. And I was reminded about this on Facebook last night, going, oh my gosh, we are so much better now. But we put ourselves out there to be really not good at it. Like, we weren't very open. People thought we were funny on that other podcast, but we weren't open. We didn't really get to be as honest as we wanted to be. And there was a lot of constraints on there, but we kept showing up to the best of our ability with what we wanted, because there was something bigger that we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we both knew we wanted to do a podcast. We didn't know we'd be sitting here 2 years later, literally side by side with a company and down the street.
Right.
But we put in those reps imperfectly. And even when that podcast ended and that opportunity ended, we knew we were going to make one together. And we took our time to go, when's the right time to do this? Because other people were like, when are you and Justin coming back for our podcast? When are you guys going to make your own podcast? And we were like, could you give us some time? Could you give us some time to develop a structure so that we could be consistent and get better at it? And now sitting here, there's not a day that I'm ever nervous about what we do. And I can't wait to see 2 years from now how much better we get at doing it, and what that looks like if we're in this corner, or, can't even fathom what we're doing in 2 years. But if we would have not taken that risk, that imperfect risk at the beginning to be bad at something, kind of like the guitar, that desire was still in you to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It just took some time to follow through on it this year. And it might change when Blakely's born a little bit. It might be the thing that puts her to sleep, though. I mean, if she sleeps while you play, I guarantee your guitar playing is going to go up. Like, Justin gets good real quick.
Yeah. Justin accelerates from the reason that, or for some unknown reason to the world.
Some unknown reason, he just became a masterpiece, and the motivation was different.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So how do we make this, if we've given them the ability to have, a routine and structure and practice? One of the things that came up in the conversation was teaching people to be patient to acclimate. Because they do want it. They want change and they want it fast, but they don't have the character to sustain the thing they want yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
They haven't earned the right. Is this the right way to say this? Earn the right to keep it?
Yeah, I think that's one way to think about it, right? I mean, there's a lot of ways I think you could phrase it, like you haven't earned the right to keep it, or you haven't
developed the skill set to maintain it.
Yeah, you haven't put in enough reps to know how to steward it, right? So this is the main reason that people who win the lottery are broke in however many years, because they don't know how to steward money. They just whatever bought a Powerball ticket and now they have multi-million dollars. It's like, okay, well, I mean, you're going to have, in general, the people who are buying Powerball tickets fall into the category of people who don't steward money very well. That's why they're spending money on Powerball tickets. I mean, I'm just telling you. So, and it's kind of a self-selection there in a little bit, but I'm using it as an example to say nobody taught them the skill. So unless they're self-aware enough to go, I don't know what to do with all this. I need to go find somebody who, with good intentions, can help me steward this thing that I've been gifted with, right? Because they didn't earn that money. They just got lucky, right? They played the odds, and the odds happen to be in their favor. And so the reason I'm saying that is because, so yes, you could say, hey, you haven't earned the right to understand that practice yet, or you haven't enough time and reps haven't caught up yet to give you that skill, or to give you that character development, like you said, to put yourself in a spot where you can actually leverage that as a strength. So let's talk about what it looks like when you do have a routine. Okay. So when you do have a routine and you found the structure that works, and you found the frequency and intensity and whatever of your practice that works, and you do have somewhat of a routine, I'm thinking of it in about 4 steps. So let's think about how you would summit Everest. Okay. So as you get to the point where, like, you're going to have an initial jumping off point, you're going to go do your thing, you're going to be super excited, and eventually that excitement, that energy, whatever you brought to it, is going to fade, right? It's going to kind of come back to baseline, let's say. At that point, okay, because I think everybody can get to that point. I think everybody has enough, chutzpah. Is that how you say it?
Yes.
Yeah, to get to that point.
Look at you.
I mean, gotta throw in the Jewish references for you. To get to that point. At that point, you have to understand that it's inappropriate to try to bring that same energy back again without proper recovery. Okay. So let's say,
brilliant.
So let's say we got to get to base camp, right? Like, think about in the summit, or in the Everest conversation. Got to get to base camp. Okay. So base camp is where we stop, and we take some time to restore, repair, recover, however you want to think about that. We take some time to look at, like, check in, see what's going on with ourselves, see what's going on with our situation, right? How do we need to make if we do need to make a change, how is this going so far, right? Because now here we have set ourselves a new jumping off point, right? Like, I've learned 3 chords, and I've gotten really good at those 3 chords. Now I'm at base camp, right? Now I can play like 2 songs. One of them has 2 chords, one of them has 3, right? And so now from there, how do I learn 5 chords, right? Because I can't just carry myself into 5 chords, theoretically, right? I'm going to have to kind of regroup and think about, how does this connect to the next thing I'm going to learn? And so from base camp, number 1, take some time to repair and restore. Okay. That is energy intensive. So you're going to have to figure out, like, hey, how do I stay here long enough in kind of a nurtured point, right? So let's go back to your rowing example. How do I stay in a little bit of a routine with rowing, right? Do it enough, let's say 2 times a week, do it enough to get to the point where I actually have a base level understanding, and I don't have to think about keeping my heels down or keeping the chain straight as much anymore, right? That's not the time to see how far I can row in 10 minutes, right? Necessarily. Not if you want to do it with good, with good form or good consistency. And so maybe at that point you're going, okay, I'm just going to hang out here. Like, I'm not saying when you restore, you repair, you stop what you're doing. You definitely don't stop what you're doing. You just find a idle level, right? So think about a car idling, right? A car idling still has a little bit of RPM, right? It's still, the engine's still going. It's just at this, like, real consistent, steady,
it's baseline
output. Yeah, it's baseline. So you're just adjusting to that new baseline, right? You're adjusting to that new base camp. That doesn't mean you're adding on. That means you're specifically not adding on anything more frequently, more intense, or more complicated. Okay. So you repaired, you restored from that initial excitement that you had. Number 2, you're spending some time acclimating to this newfound skill. Okay. I've got 2 chords down. I've got 3 chords down. I'm just spending some time getting my fingers used to making those switches to where it's almost muscle memory, right? Same thing with the rower. It's almost muscle memory.
Because you don't think about it anymore. You just get on there and it looks
right. Well, and if I spent time thinking about it, I could improve that skill, but this is not something that I'm looking to actively improve right now, right?
Yeah. Well, you've also been doing it for how long, right? Somebody else playing guitar looks at you and like, oh my gosh, look at how much effort he's putting in to something. This goes all the way back to the conversation. that they make look effortless.
Right.
When you and I are together and you're rowing, I'm like, yeah, mine does not look like that. He makes that look really efficient. And so, yeah, it is going back to what you were saying, coming back to base camp.
So we spent some time acclimating in base camp. So acclimating to the schedule, to the the routine that we've developed. Okay. And I don't have a timeline for that. For some people, that could be, you may need to spend 2 weeks in that mode. Some people need to spend 2 months in that mode. I mean, if it's a big enough goal, right? Like, who knows? You have a lot going on in other areas of your life. You might need to spend a year in that spot of just getting acclimated. That sounds like a long time, but depending on how intense this change you're trying to make, or how intense your life is outside of this change you're trying to make, you may need a lot of time just going through the foundational skills so that you never, ever, ever fall below those but foundational skills, right? Minus some type of unforeseen, let's say, catastrophic style of event. Even if then, you could recover those foundational skills very easily. So you restored, you acclimated. Now we prepare. Once you have that acclimation, you're like, cool, this feels really good. Got my energy back, or I got my, kind of got my want to back, and we're going to prepare for the next piece. We're going to prepare for the next climb. So in my example, the guitar, right? I know 3 chords. I'm going to prepare to learn 2 more chords, right? I'm going to prepare to learn this song, and this song requires me to learn these 2 chords, right? Whatever it is. For you, I'm going to prepare to row a marathon. Well, that may be too much of a stretch. I'm going to prepare to row 10 minutes with consistent form, right? That may be your next thing that you need to summit to, that you need to get to, okay? The next spot up the mountain. And so you take time to prepare for that, right? You take time to sharpen up the skills you already know. You take time to make sure that you have the energy, the resources, the time, the money, if it's something that needs, financial input, to get to that next point. Okay, so that's your preparation. So we've gone through restoration or repair, we've gone through acclimation, we've gone through preparation, and now it's time to climb. This is where typically the exciting part is. This is where the work comes back, right? So now you kind of have to look at it with beginner's eyes again, because you are taking what you already know and layering on top of that a further skill development. So for you, it's going to be, I know the basics of a rowing pattern. I've done this for 2 months. Now I'm going to take those basics and I'm going to apply a little bit more pressure to it. And I'm going to see not how long I can go, but I'm going to give myself a time window of 10 minutes and see if I can maintain this consistent pattern of rowing and this pace and this whatever metrics you're looking at for 10 minutes, right? And you've gave yourself parameters. I'm going to try to maintain this pace for maximum amount this time, right? 10 minutes with a general fluidity and consistency, and you're going to be the judge of that. Or let's say if I was sitting there watching you for the entire time, right, I could be the judge of, like, yeah, you were 99% of those strokes you were very consistent, right? You could even film yourself and go back and watch it. Same thing for me, right? I've prepared, my fingers kind of know where the chords are, so now I'm just going to start climbing in my respect and going, I got to go, and I just got to start messing this song up, right? I just got to start going and being like, oh, that chord change doesn't work there, right? You're thinking about something else there, go sharpen up on the chords you already know, and then climb. So resting, repair, restore, acclimating to what you know, preparing to make the next climb, climbing, right? However long that takes. So it's going to be basically a little bit more of an intense focus on that next level of that skill development. And then you're going to start the process back over again, right? That energy output is going to take some rest. That rest requires you to, or in that process, you're going to get acclimated, right? You're going to kind of bounce back, and it's not so black and white as I'm spelling it out just for illustration purposes, but you're going to bounce back and forth. You're going to be like, oh, okay, I think I know enough, so I'm going to kind of pull back on the intensity of this. And then you're going to be like, well, maybe I'll do a little bit more, right? And then now I'm trying to get acclimated. So the acclimation process is just really a bounce back between, am I still in the climb, or am I in the rest and recover phase? It's really easy to see it when you're climbing Everest, because like your body will tell you, oh yeah, you're not ready to you're not acclimated to this elevation yet. You need to stop. If you try to rush that process, you're going to get hurt.
Been there, done that, bought that t-shirt.
Right.
Been there, done that, bought that t-shirt.
In terms of a physical skill, okay? If you try to rush the process, you're probably going to end up hurting. You have a higher likelihood of hurting yourself. In terms of something that doesn't necessarily take a physical feat, so let's take guitar playing, for example, okay? Besides the discomfort on your fingers when you're first learning to play and like getting your fingers in the right position, so like literally the flexibility of your hand, it's more of a mental game, remembering patterns and muscle memory and timing and rhythm, that type of stuff. And so you can beat yourself up mentally as you can with a lot of other things. If you rush it, you can be like, man, I just want to be able to play this freaking song. How hard can it be? Right?
Okay, you bring up such a good point. And I want to tie this too, because most people are listening to us either have a functional health journey where they're trying to repair their body, or they have relational journeys that they're trying to repair their relationship with themselves or with other people, or they have a weight loss journey where they have been the person who typically has been a leaner physique before, they had lost weight and didn't sustain it and gained it back. We're not talking about, hey, having a medical thing or a metabolic thing necessarily, but they didn't have the skill set. They didn't do it long enough. The friction was too great, so they went back to the previous base camp. So they couldn't sustain it, and the rush is actually such a poor stewardship of like the gift that you give to yourself and things taking longer. And I think it's one of the biggest friction points that I have in this industry is that we're promised quick fixes. And not just this industry, I'm going to take that back. Overall, you want to repair a relationship? It's going to take some time. The relationship with yourself and relationship with other people, you're changing patterns. That doesn't happen quickly. And to get it to stick, that stickability, that stick-to-itiveness takes time and pressure to test it, to know that you don't return to a previous base camp. And there's no other way to do that.
Yeah.
There's no other way to do that. And so for us, and I hope people hear it from us, or even just watching my journey, like the patience it takes to however long this process takes, however long it takes you to be able to play whatever that song is you have. What song is in your mind that you really want to play right now?
That I really want to play?
Yeah.
The song that I really like, and this is going to sound so funny. I'm like, oh, he's a Justin Bieber fan. I do like Justin Bieber. But the song I really like, the sound of the guitar makes, is Love Yourself by Justin Bieber. Because it's very simple in the way that anybody can listen to that song and be like, oh yeah, I hear the guitar is literally the whole thing. There's like a trumpet in it somewhere, but I'm saying like the guitar is literally the entire beat of the song. It's just a couple chords on the guitar.
Do you know that Ed Sheeran wrote that song?
Did he?
Ed Sheeran wrote the song.
Not shocking.
And he actually wanted it to go to Rihanna.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Oh. And it went to the Biebs.
What a tangled web we weave.
Learned that on TikTok.
On the Sharon Talk, we learned that.
I say that because you want to play Love Yourself. Okay. The friction that it takes to get you to earn, to get there, to that skill set, is where the character development is. And you can't rush character development. You watch people get famous really quick. They can't handle the pressure.
Right.
Everybody's an overnight success. Well, that's different now, but with social media, people can be overnight successes. And you watch it, like people go viral and can't handle the success or the pressure because their character didn't have time to develop with the friction. So my ask is going to be, when people listen to this, is that if you gave yourself the gift of time, would you be more satisfied with the result? The thing you're rushing for, you're not going to be able to sustain. Nobody ever has. No, it's not how character is developed.
So my little rule of thumb there would be, however long you think it's going to take, double it.
Oh, at least.
Yeah. I mean, just to give everybody like a rough, easy, referenceable rule of thumb. Hey, I think it's going to take me 3 months to lose this weight. Let's go ahead and take 6. 6 minimum, right? and then I'll figure out how to sustain it after that or whatever. The one thing I will say, you reminded me of, what used to work for you is not going to work for you again. Okay. Mm-mm. So everything is an adaptation. It's an adaptation to your environment. So let's say I've been down this road with clients before, all the time, is, you were a mom, or excuse me, you were, 20-year-old female. And when you wanted to lose weight, you just stopped eating bread. Right. So like, hey, I go to that tactic. I do that for 2 weeks. It works super well. And I love the way that I look. And maybe I added back in just a little bit and I don't look as lean as I did, but I can maintain a pretty good physique just that. Okay. Well, you didn't have that notion that you wanted to do that for, let's say several years after college, you start a family and you've had kids. And so now you are, let's say 30, 34, whatever. And, you go to cut out bread again and it doesn't work as well. Okay. Well, here's the thing. You're trying to, or at least you didn't do it long enough for it to work as well as it did in a shorter timeline back then. Okay. Well, here's the thing. Your body was making an adaptation from that time you did it the first time all the way however many times you tried it or did it and use it as a tactic to this time now post kids, right? Post having a job, post having other responsibilities, right? Maybe, going from a young person who was in college to now a young adult who has their own life. And so looking at that as like, oh, well, my body just adapted over the course of those years. Of course, this is not going to work as well as it did. It might still kind of work, right? It might not work at all. That just depends on other factors that are involved. But now what I'm trying to say is you're trying to go right back to that base camp in just the same amount of time. And you have this delusion in your head that like, oh, it worked for me in 2 weeks last time. With the exact same, I didn't have to change anything, but I just stopped eating. I just stopped making sandwiches, right? Made salads instead of sandwiches, right? Same ingredients, just no salad or no sandwiches, only salad. And so now it's like, okay, let's look at it from the steps we laid out. Okay. You didn't take time to, you didn't even give yourself time to recover from the previous attempts, much less acclimate to your new situation, right? You now have responsibilities. You have kids. You have, your body is different. Your hormonal makeup may be a little bit different, right? And so you look at it and go, oh, okay, well, I'm not acclimated to that yet. So what can I get acclimated to that's relative? What's in my realm of possibility? Well, I can start by removing one sandwich from my week, right? I can start by drinking a little bit more water, eating a little bit more vegetables, or whatever the basics of your knowledge and education are. And that way, once you're getting acclimated to where you're currently at, then you can prepare to remove the bread again or remove the whatever again, with hopefully some guidance. Now you're not just shooting from the hip. And then you can worry about climbing when it's appropriate, right? As opposed to, hey, you know what? It's a Saturday and I've had a lot of carbs today. And you know what? I'm going to wake up tomorrow on Sunday and I'm not going to have any carbs anymore for a week. Okay. And then 3 days in, you're like a freaking trash panda and you are just housing everything in your kid's snack drawer, right? And so, hey, you obviously are not ready for that base camp yet. You obviously have not acclimated to your situation enough to get to the point where that is a considerable tactic for you. Like that's even worth pursuing. So you need more preparation. You need more acclimation to whatever it is that you want to do. And then we can start that climb, hopefully together with someone with guidance. Okay. Now, so I'm making that point to say just because it worked even 1 year ago doesn't mean that you're in a spot because you've adapted to different circumstances. So now you have to recreate those circumstances to some degree. You have to work to recreate a different circumstance, a different internal and external environment to where you can make that adaptation again. I'm not saying all hope is lost once you turn whatever age, because it's just your age, women, and you just can't lose weight anymore and your hormones are jacked up and blame your kids for everything because this is why you pee on yourself when you jump rope and all that other bullshit, right?
Other cool things I've learned on Tuesday.
It's an adaptation, right? Everything's an adaptation. And so when you look at it from that little bit, you give it a name and you look at it from a little bit more of an attached point of view, it gives you the proper perspective. Let's go back to our equation, the beginning of the episode. It gives you that proper perspective to start to develop the structure and start to use the practice. And that way you can start to build out whatever that timeline is for you, recruit the help that you need to recruit, get the tools that are necessary, and start to learn the things that you need to learn.
So to wrap this one up, if you were going to give our listener a strategy, like to really put this into practice for routine and structure and practice, right? How small do they start for whatever it is?
Yeah.
Because people go too big. Like your carb analogy was amazing. We do this with clients all the time. I struggle getting to the gym. Can you just drive to the parking lot? Could you go to the front door? And usually people look at us like we're crazy, but because of the work we do and the training that we have is like, there's a method to our madness that gets people not only into the gym or into whatever habit that they're looking to create, but it's sustainable, because then it creates a new identity and a new character trait that they get to go to the next base camp. So I don't want people to pick something so big that they can't put this in practice. How small is small enough to elicit this change to whatever their personal Everest is, whether it's financial, relational, physical, functional.
We've done this with people before, so I know you're going to resonate with this. Is I am the type of person who, that's how small you can start if everything seems daunting and you just are not willing to get beat up one more time, right? Literally, it's writing it down or saying it to yourself in the mirror. A little bit of more of an advanced step for a lot of people. I know that sounds weird, but it is.
It's a big friction point.
It's a big friction point to look at yourself and say it. And it feels weird because like society doesn't like look at themselves and say things in the mirror or whatever. But you can start by writing it down, typing it in your phone, whatever you got to do, to say, I am the type of person who goes to the gym every day. I'm the type of person who goes to the gym. I'm the type of person who goes to the gym. I'm the type of person who goes to the gym. Even if nothing you actually do past writing that down matches that statement. However, you're now talking to yourself. And guess what happens when yourself starts listening? It starts to want to make that thing come true, right? Whatever you consume consumes you. And so you will be, okay, if I'm the type of person who goes to the gym, well, what would that person do? I mean, I guess they get workout clothes, right? They'd at least lay out clothes, right, on their counter or on their, on their bedside table or whatever, right? They'd lay out clothes somewhere, in the night before, or the morning of, or whatever, and they'd put those clothes on, maybe, right? And then just maybe, they might just lay down on the floor and do a stretch. I don't know. They might warm up. Like, who knows, right? They may even just drive to the gym. They may even call a gym and say, what do you guys have in terms of memberships, right? They're going to start taking those actions. So I'm the type of person who blank is really the smallest step I would say people could take. It's the low-hanging fruit in the situation. That's going to be for the majority of people without going straight to an actual action, like an actual physical, getting the clothes out, buying the water, buying the supplementation, because the worst thing that you can do is go and start to spend money because you have a great idea because you're sitting on the couch and you're fat and happy. And then you wake up in a week and you're like, that's the worst $100 I ever spent.
If not more. How many people have Pelotons and don't use them?
Right.
I literally was on a call with a client of ours who is just a new client of ours that's starting here shortly, and talking about how much gym equipment they bought for their home and not used because it was a good idea, but the behavior piece wasn't. So, okay, I got a question for you. I'm gonna make it personal. What is a current for you? I am the person who that you're saying to yourself.
Currently, I am the person who endures. Okay. Because for me, one of the hardest things to wrap my head around consistently and remind myself of consistently, not that I don't understand it, it's just that I get human and want things to come faster than they do, understand that endurance is really everything. Endurance is everything. If you stay in the game long enough, you're going to win the game eventually. It's in every law of every math book you've ever read. Okay.
Probability.
And it's behind every successful business that spends decades in being successful in their category. That endurance is the piece that makes the most difference. And so everything we talked about today is just a recipe to start to build your endurance, right, in your pursuits of things. And so I get real impatient when it comes to our business. I get real impatient when it comes to needing to be better at the thing that we do, that we already do better than 99% of the people out there. That there are spots in our brains that want you to be at the top tomorrow. Right.
We've talked about this.
And so, I'm the person who endures just means you don't even have to be smart. You don't even have to be smart. You just have to keep going. You just have to be consistently not stupid enough to stay in the game. You just have to be consistently around more often than anybody else for the longest amount of time, because eventually you'll be one of the few that's left.
100%. I'm also super thankful that you are smart, though.
I'll give everybody a little bit of a helpful analogy that as we end this is, if you took a person and you gave them 100 points for intelligence and 100 points for endurance, okay, and they started there, and you steadily over time, you took away all their points for endurance. So they were super smart, but had no stick-to-itiveness, right? They had no continuity in anything. They would essentially be an ineffectual genius.
We see it.
They'd know everything and do nothing, right? But if you took a person who had 100% or 100 points for endurance and you took away all their intelligence, they own the most successful trash hauling business you've ever seen, because they stayed in it long enough. They might be dumb as a box of rocks, but they figured something out to do the shit that nobody else wants to do. They have the best dog shit cleaning business you've ever seen. Trash business, whatever. Pipe sewage cleaning business, what you name it, right?
Yeah.
They have the best business that requires low levels of intelligence, because they have the endurance and they stuck with it long enough, and life just taught them enough lessons, and they took the knocks on the head enough times to go, I might not be the smartest guy, around, but hey, when the smart guys dropped all their shit off at the front door and said, hey, I'm tired of doing this, I just picked it up. Everybody who came, I just picked it up. I just kept picking it up, and I just kept picking it up. It's like, you know what? You don't have to do that. You can just come work for me. I just kept picking it up. And that's really where the people who win are.
I love it.
So you don't have to be smart. You just have to keep going.
I love it.
So, thank you for listening, as always. And if you're with us here at the end, I know this is a little bit of a longer one. I think we got excited being the first time back in a while. We invite you to, again, I'm going to invite you to our Fortify Health Coaching Co-op. Come interact with us. Come have these conversations, because this is just a squeezed down micro version of the broader version of conversations that we have in the group. And, hit us up on Instagram. Hit us if you're scared to. There's a free trial for the group, but if you're scared to commit to something like that, hit us up on Instagram. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk about it. If you're even scared to do that, maybe just share this podcast with somebody. Don't be a hoe, share the show. What I like to say.
You like to say that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
well, now it is and forever will be.
Yeah. Well, as we end here today, I'll leave you with this: be a little bit kinder than is necessary, especially to yourself. And so we'll see y'all next time.